Well, I had to get all dressed up for this one because this is formal, this is exciting, this is fancy, this is something that I've been waiting for, and I really feel like I'm a part of living history here. Brandon Sanderson, the author of the Stormlight Archive, is a living legend. If the world continues to exist 20, 30, 50, 100 years from now, Brandon Sanderson, I'm convinced, will be looked back on as one of the greatest writers of our time, fantasy authors of our time, world builders, creators of our time. Like some of the greats that we look back on today, he will be considered one of the great, and the Stormlight Archive will be among his crowning achievements. And he's writing them now, and I'm reading them now, having just completed the 4th book in the Stormlight Archive. Let's talk about it. Rhythm of War by Brandon Sanderson is the biggest book that I've ever read before. 117 chapters, 1,219 pages, and 470,000 artfully crafted words for this mammoth of a book. Again, it's called Rhythm of War, the 4th book in the Stormlight Archive, as we continue the compelling fantasy epic that Brandon Sanderson is creating for us. Just to be clear, this is going to be a spoiler-free review. In fact, most of my videos on this channel that are book reviews are spoiler-free. I want to make them as accessible to a mass audience as possible. If ever I am going to have a spoiler-full review, I'll make sure that that is clearly communicated. And I do intend to do 2 reviews of Rhythm of War. One is this video you're watching now, which is spoiler-free, and another one within the coming weeks that is spoiler-filled. So stay tuned for that one. We pick up a year after the concluding events of the previous book, Oathbringer, which is unique because in the first 3 books, I'm pretty sure that they pick up directly after one another. There might be a short window of time there, but it is not long at all. This has the longest gap in between books 3 and 4 that we've seen so far, and our characters are trying to establish themselves in this new legendary tower city of Urithiru. Now, the story starts differently than the other 3 books do. Sanderson has been known to really give us a slow burn that really, he takes his time building the narrative, building the characters until having some climactic moments near the end of the various parts of the parts throughout the book, and then the infamous Sanderlanche, as it's coined, near the end of the book, the last 100, 200 pages or so. Here, this book was comprised differently. We start as Sanderson tends to do kind of the middle points of his books. He clearly communicated that he wanted to start with a quicker pace in this story, and he does. We are immediately thrust into action, and it carries on for the next little bit. As the pacing of the narrative does begin to slow down some, the stakes have already been set. This war that is brooding between humans and singers intensifies. The understanding of the radiant abilities, really one of the magic systems here, is explored more deeply in this narrative, and we find it being attacked from the outside as well. And the union between Spren and humans are being tested as our beloved cast of characters continue to face all of their inner torments and demons, which might possibly be the greatest war of all. The story in a book this massive and in a series this complex, as you could imagine, is layered. It's multi-tiered. There is a lot going on here. There's a wide cast of characters, many POVs, and so I can't possibly give you a comprehensive plot of this story without going into the first book and the second book and the third book. But what I have done recently is, in preparation for Rhythm of War, I produced 3 5-minute recap videos. It's really 4, including the overview at the beginning, but 3 5-minute recap videos of the first 3 books in the Stormlight Archive. You can check them out in the annotation, and it was an undertaking because these books are equally as massive and the stories are equally as complex. The characters are equally as divergent, and they have so much depth and so intricate, but I did my best to really bring those. They're not a substitute for the books by any means, but they're a good refresher if you're coming into the series anew. So if you want to know more about the plots of those three stories, you can check out those videos, and eventually I'll do one for Rhythm of War as well. But suffice it to say, the story here is layered and deep, and there's a lot of different things that are going on, but I tried my best here to kind of just summarize briefly what the story here is. There are 5 different parts in this book, and in between the various parts, there are a series of interlude chapters from different characters and POVs. And not each of these parts are equal. In fact, I would point out part 3 as being one that some readers have talked about being slower paced, and I did feel that as well. It wasn't a torment to get through by any means, but I did feel like we had some of our characters doing the same thing chapter after chapter, page after page, and they weren't succeeding. They were trying different things, but they were going towards one goal, and it took the entire part for them to finally achieve and accomplish whatever they were set out to accomplish. A lot of people find this redundant or monotonous. I found it slow, and it was the only part in the entire narrative that took me a little bit to get through. But it's worth it, and I understand what Sanderson was doing there, but I do feel like it could have been even stronger if there were maybe 100 pages taken out. That being said, parts 1 and 2, I absolutely flew through because it is nonstop action and reveals and character depth, and they're just so good. And then parts 4 and 5 are exceptional. There's a Sanderlanche here for sure, maybe not as much as some previous books, but you have more reveals here in this book than ever before, starting in part 1 and going throughout the fullness of the book. There are so many things, not only in the Stormlight Archive, that are being revealed, but in the cosmere as a whole. We've talked on this channel before about the cosmere. It is Brandon Sanderson's creation. It's a bigger world where various ones of his series they live in. They're different worlds and different magic systems and different characters in these different worlds, but in this one cosmere, in this one universe. Now, for the most part, they're unaware of one another. But we've had traces throughout various series like the Mistborn series and the White Sands graphic novel series and some of the standalones like Elantris and Warbreaker, as well as the Stormlight Archive, where you get traces, you get hints along the way that some characters know about the cosmere, know about the greater thing that's going on. Well, here, for the very first time in Rhythm of War, all of that is just completely like the curtain is pulled down and the cosmere takes the main stage. It's no longer just the background, it is the main stage. And Sanderson communicated that clearly, that for the very first time, you kind of need to know what's going on in the cosmere or you're going to be confused. Up until this point, you might have just missed a few cool details, but now you would be thoroughly confused. By this point in the series, I would strongly encourage you to have read Elantris, Warbreaker for sure, the Mistborn series, Era 1 for sure, and then if you would like to read some of the side stories, the short stories, the novellas, do that as well. I would encourage you to read all of it. I've read all of it except for Elantris, honestly, and so Though I'm going to do that soon because I want to know the fullness here of what's going on in the cosmere, and I don't want to miss any cool key details that Sanderson loves to salt and pepper into the narrative. Again, here it's pervasive. I think another issue that some readers might find with this book is that the flashbacks aren't as meaningful or as impactful as some of the previous books. In the earlier books, and again, you can see this in those 5-minute summaries, they follow the story of characters like Dalinar, Kaladin, Shallan, characters that you really feel attached to, and that through their flashbacks, you find out more about their character and big reveals, right? Here, you've got flashbacks of singers for the very first time, and a listener, Vinley and Eshonai, they're sisters, and you get some revelations there definitely, but you don't get as much, and you're not as attached to these characters as you are some of those other ones that I mentioned. And so while I found the flashbacks riveting and great, I would see that as being an issue that some readers find here, that you're not getting as many reveals and you don't feel as connected to them and you just want to get back to the main story. That's unfortunate because I feel like there was a lot of good stuff there, and it made some of the payoffs at the end of the story really, really, really good. But for some readers, I think that would be a viable issue. Typically, the flashback character is kind of the main character of the story in the present day as well. That's not the case here. Really, this book is Navani Colin's book. I would argue that 1000%. It is Navani's book. We are with her a large portion of the time, much more than her husband Dalinar's, and maybe equally to Shallan and Kaladin. I don't know, it's a toss-up. I haven't done the math. But Navani, I think that you are spending a lot more time with her, which is a really, really good thing. A lot of growth happens in her story, and her villain, the fused scholar Raboniel, is one of the best realized enemies in the series to date. The story between them, the relationship between them, the discoveries that they make together are just so exceptional. Finally, this book has set the tone and the stakes for the final book in this arc. The Stormlight Archive is going to be 10 books long of 2 different parts, 5 books each. And so our very next book that we'll get in maybe 2 or 3 years from now, book number 5, will have to tie up a lot of loose ends and have some epic conclusions that will, of course, set the scene and the stakes for books 6 through 10, which I can't even begin to imagine how big those are going to be. But the revelations and the setup that all happened here in book 4 were done so well to just leave us on the edge of our seats saying, what could possibly happen next? And how bad it could possibly be, how bad it could possibly go. Without spoilers, I'm just going to say poor Wit. When I came to Rhythm of War, Words of Radiance, book number 2 in the Stormlight Archive, was my favorite in the series. When I finished Rhythm of War, I really had to sit down and debate which one did I prefer, which one did I like better. And though it is extremely close, Rhythm of War is now my favorite Stormlight Archive book. I just think they did so many things well. There's not as many like cool in-your-face scenes like you get in Words of Radiance, because for the first time you're seeing some of those radiant abilities. You're seeing Kaladin become who he is, and he's a beloved fan of this. He's beloved by fans. And here, you get some new characters and you get some character development, but you get just some exceptional moments, as a lot of time is spent in Shadesmar with some of the crew and the relationship between Spren and Human and the bonds there, what's going on within Urithiru, of course, all of the cosmere revelations, what Kaladin's inner turmoil, which I really didn't even touch on much, but Sanderson continues to do an exceptional job here with exploring the human psyche and both physical and mental disabilities, struggles that individuals are going through. And he's trying to portray that well. Some might find that he's done that heavy-handed here, but I feel like it was a breath of fresh air in the sense of it's not explored much in fantasy literature, and he has done it and handled it in a way that I feel has been done so well. All of these reasons and more caused this book to be my favorite entry in the Stormlight Archive to date. I'm just so pleased to be able to be reading these as they come out. I really do feel like I'm a part of history, not that I'm taking an active part in it, but I'm being able to observe it as it is happening. The Stormlight Archive will go down in history as one of the greatest works of fantasy of all time, if not just one of the greatest works of literature of all time. I'm not only hear from it, I get to be a part of it, and you do too. But let me know what you thought of Rhythm of War down in the comments down below. Can we geek out together? I know you didn't dislike it. who would dislike it? Actually, I have seen a reviewer or two that did not finish the book, and hopefully they'll come back to it because they are dead wrong. So let me know of your thoughts down below, unless you think that this is not a good book. But please, we'll talk about it down below. Thank you as always for watching and for liking this video. If you haven't yet, click subscribe, join the Dragon Army as we end the year. We're nearing 1,000 of you, 1,000 subs. Would love to hit that number soon. By the end of the year would be great, but we only have a few days left. So share Dragon Army with someone that you love this Christmas holiday season. Get them a subscription. It's free, right? It's free.